Well, good morning, everyone. Let me call to order the Lubbock Metropolitan Planning Organization, the Transportation Policy Committee. It is Tuesday. It is February the 15th in the year of our Lord 2022. It is a little bit after 8:30. We'll call it 8:34, and a quorum is present. Before we begin all of our regular course of business, well, this is regular course of business as well. I'd like to read a letter and then ask for the board a motion to accept this letter. This is from Jeff Griffith. Please accept this letter as notice that I am resigning from my position on the Transportation Policy Committee. I'm retiring from the Lubbock City Council in May, and therefore I need to resign this seat on the committee. Serving on this committee for 8 years has been an honor. The collaboration and input this committee provides on Lubbock's transportation infrastructure will impact the area for generations to come. Thank you for your dedication to transportation needs of Lubbock metropolitan area and allowing me to serve with you. I wish you and the Transportation Policy Committee nothing but success moving forward. Respectfully, Jeff Griffith.
Mr. Chairman, would you accept the motion to accept Mr. Griffith's resignation?
I have a motion from Mayor Dan Pope. Do I have a second?
Second.
Mr. Chairman, if I may.
Please.
I just want to acknowledge Mr. Griffith's service, both as a member and as a chair of this board over the last 7+ years. And we're indebted to him for that. He felt it was time to stand down, and as you'll probably mention in a moment, at our meeting last Tuesday night, the City Council unanimously nominated Mr. Massengale, Mayor Pro Tem Steve Massengale, to take Mr. Griffith's place.
Is there anyone else that would wish to speak? If not, I'll call for the question. The question is on the acceptance of the resignation of our friend Jeff Griffith. Without any further discussion, I'll call for the question. All in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? Motion carries. Thank you, Jeff. I don't know if you're listening or clearly not here, but thank you so much. Thank you for being a mentor to me as well. Yeah, yes, Steve, I would.
In June, Mr. Chairman, in June, when you guys convene on the that's third Wednesday, I won't be paying attention to what's going on. I just want you to know, okay? Yeah.
Oh, man. Quitters all. All right. Mr. Massengale, would you please come join us on the Transportation Policy Committee? Daryl, would you pull down that nameplate that's right up there, please? Well, I don't want. He is, but now Steve's here, so you know. Welcome, Councilman. Good to see you. Thank you for agreeing to serve on this Transportation Policy Committee. I know you've been very in tune with what the Policy Committee has been doing. I know you've attended several of our meetings here. This is not going to be a strong up curve for you to step in, but I'm honored to be able to serve with you.
Well, thanks, Judge. It's my pleasure and honor to be here. I just want to echo Mayor Pope's comments about Mr. Griffith and the work he did on this body. He's kind of, in my mind, he's recognized as kind of the transportation guy around City Hall, and so I've got big shoes to fill, but I'm looking forward to working with this group.
You may not have read the fine print, but you also get to help with Doc Addington if he comes out of line. That's, that was the role that was the role that Griffith filled, and we would expect you to do the same. Okay.
I'll do my best.
Awesome. All right. Thank you all very much. Item 3 on our agenda is the safety procedures. They are posted, but as always, if anything happens, we follow Jared Atkinson. So just try to keep up. We want to acknowledge the guests who are here today. Thank you all so much for being here, for taking interest in transportation in Lubbock County. We appreciate that very much. At this time also, I will open up this floor to any public comments. Tammy, is there anybody who has signed up for public comments? Okay. If not, then I will close public comments and go to agenda item 4.1. 4.1, we've invited Mr. Keith Bryant from the Lubbock, there he is, from the superintendent of Lubbock Cooper School District to address the transportation policy regarding urban growth. Mister, how are you doing?
I'm great.
Good to see you.
Good to see all of you.
Mr. Bryant,
Ladies
the
and
floor is
gentlemen,
yours.
welcome. Thank you for the opportunity to be here, and good morning to you. I wanted to come and share with you the future planned campuses that we have in our district. When I look back, I think in 2017, I came before this committee and did a similar thing, and it's my understanding it was helpful in your planning and your forecasting and your outlook to have that information. So I believe all of you have a document in front of you, and I'm going to show it on the computer screen as well, so I'll just kind of walk you through it. First of all, just a picture of the growth in Lubbock Cooper. When I graduated from Texas Tech in 1990, the school district on the south part of town was pretty small. And I never could have envisioned it being what it is today. As many of you know, I've talked to people when 50th Street was the end of Lubbock, and everything else south of there was a cotton field. And then when I was at Tech, I think 98th was definitely the end of the world on the south side of Lubbock, really 82nd, but a little bit of, I think 98th may have been a blacktop at the time. But you can see we've grown significantly over the past 15 years specifically. We're in the top 10 fastest growing districts in the state of Texas in terms of percentage growth. Back in 2005, had 2,700 students. Flip that now to current times, we're at 7,600. The next page shows the enrollment trends in our region. This was done by a demographer in the last the 5 years from 2015 to 2020. We're the fastest growing district total in terms of student change of any in the region. Some more information may be interesting to you that came out with the last 10 years. Specifically, the bottom right-hand corner, the green arrow, that our district households grew almost 4,000. And I will tell you, working with developers that are developing in South Lubbock, it is my understanding there are some 15,000 door fronts planned in the next 10 to 15 years, 7 years. Who knows how fast they'll grow, but those developments are, some are not platted, but many are. And so we've got to plan accordingly. And our enrollment in the next page shows our enrollment forecast. We plan to be, we're about 10 years behind Friendship in terms of number of students. It almost tracks perfectly. But by the end of 29-30, we should be between 10,500 and 11,000. So you have the bottom number there, about 10,500 students. So with that in mind, we've got to plan schools, and our community passed what I believe, I've been told, is the largest bond in the history of Lubbock County, which was $420 million back in May of last year. And hopefully that is going to carry our construction over the next 8 to 10 years if these growth patterns continue. So the next shot is our current second high school. Woodrow Road is on the, this is looking northwest from the southeast corner. So the road that angles up to the right is Quaker Avenue, and the road at the bottom that angles up to the left is Woodrow Road. You can see our master site there with the golf course Red Feather to the north of us. It's being built. This is a rendering of the whole facility once it's completed, which will be about a 6-year process. The campus is being built for 2,200 students. Down the road 3 miles, Lubbock Cooper High School will have a capacity. We're doing one final project out of our 16 bond to expand it. It will have a capacity of 2,200 students as well. So we're going to take care of the high schools in that manner. Again, that is Quaker and Woodrow Road is that corner. We don't own that corner. We only own the land, really kind of where you see all the work going on, and it gives you an idea of that location. Our third middle school, I wanted you to see this. We plan to open it in the fall of 26. What's on the bottom I didn't label as 1585 or 130th Street. You see the ball fields on Milwaukee to the left, the youth ball fields. And we own that L-shaped piece of land for a third middle school that will house 1,100 students. Of course, Frankfurt and 122nd, Iola is the street that borders it to the left of that yellow line. The condition of Frankfurt is concerning, obviously a 2-lane road, but it is the site where this middle school will open in the fall of 26. The next page shows the location of our 6th elementary that will open in the fall of 27. Between University and Avenue P, south of 146th Street. Some 4 years ago, I left Lubbock to go to Austin for a meeting on a Saturday, and I came back on a Wednesday. When I left, Bell Farms didn't have anything but dirt, and when I came back, there were 4 houses standing. And since that time, that neighborhood has grown. It's just to the north of 146th Street. If you know Beaton Bow and how quickly they move, that neighborhood has gone up. And so we are in need of a 6th elementary, and it was in our bond package in 2021. And the location is here as you see. And of course, University was redone with the city and county a few years ago, but it does remain a 2-lane road. 146th Street is still not, nothing's been done to it other than we relocated a sewer line to help Txdot out with 1585 so that we don't cross that anymore. And then finally, this is the location of our 7th elementary school that we anticipate will be in a future bond initiative somewhere around the 2030 time frame, depending on growth. This is going to be located 146th and Frankfurt is the cross streets. Woodrow Road will be on the bottom of this. You can't see it, but to give you an idea of where our growth is going to be. So I just wanted to try to give you a look ahead of what our needs are going to be. We built our elementaries to house 850 students, our middle schools 1,100, and our high schools 2,200. And that comes after about 2 years of working with a community group to determine what the ratio of students to teachers and our capacities at these campuses should be. When interesting comment I'll make, and then I'll be quiet and answer questions. When we passed our bond last May, we did it with the understanding everything we were talking about growth-wise would be on the west side of 87. And now, and we're fully supportive of annexation on the east side of 87, but I thought it would be years, not months, before it occurred. And so we're starting to look on the east side of 87 at where future schools might be located. But again, that's for another visit with you in future years. Mr. Chair, I'm pleased to answer questions or provide any clarification at this point in time.
Any questions? I have one. I'd like to start going back to your district demographic snapshot. We have a rise from 2010, the green arrow in the bottom right. In 2010, 7,800 households. In 2020, 1,195. And did I hear you correctly that they're already planning 1,500 15,000 additional ones?
The
So you're
num-
going to more than double?
The numbers I have from the developers, and these are straight from meetings I've had with individual developers, indicate a total number of what we call front doors. Apartments, duplexes, houses, in the foreseeable future, right at 15,000.
Okay, so that's going to more than double this
Yes,
number that you have here.
yes.
Is that correct? So looking at your enrollment forecast, currently at roughly 7,000, projecting to at up to 30 at 10,000, is that really too conservative?
You know, it could be. These numbers were done 2 years ago in preparation for the 2021 bond election, and nothing on the other side of 87 was planned. The southwest portion, well, the west, I'll say the west portion and the Woodrow Road, the 1585 portion was not really considered in this, and that number's around 7,000 front doors in that area. So, Judge, to answer your question, I think it is a little bit under projected.
What is the opening date of the new high school?
Fall of 2023. Now, it's going to take 6 years to build it.
Completed,
Complete the whole site.
but you plan
But
on
we
having
are-
students
We will
on
have freshmen and
campus?
sophomores between 400 and 500 in the fall of 23.
Thank you. Any other questions?
Just
Mr. Gifford?
maybe a comment and a request. First of all, I'm just doing the math in my head, Mr. City Manager, Mayor Pro Tem, you can probably help me. We've got either completed or underway annexations of north of 4,000 acres. Now, a little bit of that is what you spoke of being east of 87, but the vast majority of it is west, and much of it is way west.
West of Frankfurt.
Yeah, as you know. We had another phone call just this week about another section that would be in your district. So I don't think you're making things up at all. My request, Keith, would be that sometime, whether it be for our current council or maybe the new council that'll be seated late this spring, that you bring this presentation back and give it at a Lubbock City Council meeting.
More than happy to do so.
And same for the Commissioners Court.
Glad to do it.
We need to make sure those policy makers are understanding what's going to happen.
And one more just final thing. We appreciate the fact that the planning is spot on. You know, give it working 10 years out. You know, you didn't say it, but you know, Mr. Atkinson and I drove recently, and you know, I deemed 146 as the new frontier. I mean, it's remarkable what's going on out there. And as you said, it's you were kind. You didn't even mention Avenue P when you mentioned 146th. But there's work to be done. It's not just Woodrow Road. There's a lot of work to be done.
Absolutely.
Is there anyone else? Questions or comments? Mr. Bryant?
Thank you.
Keith,
Excuse
thank
me,
you. Oh.
Mr. You had me, I thought you were gonna look this way.
Now
No,
I'm
no,
looking
no
this way.
problem, no problem, no problem
Ms.
at all. I just have a
Patterson-Harris.
quick question based on, as you were starting to give your answer. You indicated with the second high school, freshman, sophomore.
We will open with freshman, sophomore, just because of capacity.
Okay.
The next year, we'll add a junior class, the next year, a senior
Okay,
class.
so they both
Sorry.
will serve freshman through senior classes?
Yes, ma'am. Both
Okay.
comprehensive high schools, yes, ma'am.
Okay, thank you.
Sheila, I didn't mean to confuse.
No,
Yes.
no, you're good.
Perfect.
That just let you know I was listening.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you,
Brian,
Judge.
thank you so
Appreciate
much,
it very much.
for being here. I think just kind of looking around the dais, we can see a lot of head and numbers just kind of spinning. You know, there's a lot of problems and issues, and I think I never see growth as a problem. I always see it as an issue, something we need to tackle. But I'll tell you, I sure like growth, and growth is much better than the other way around, wouldn't you say, Mayor? But what better than a declining?
That's a high-class problem is how we define
It is a
that.
high-class problem, and so thank you for the work that you're doing at Cooper. We appreciate that so much, and God bless you. Thank you so much.
Appreciate it.
All right. Move to item 5 on our agenda, which is approval of the January 18, 2022 meeting minutes of the Transportation Policy Committee. Do I have a motion?
Mr. Chair,
Mr. Atkinson?
my apologies, stepping on you. Would like to offer one correction.
All right, please.
And then possibly a motion to approve on top. Under staff and guests present, we have Mr. Keenum, our city engineer, listed. I don't believe he was at that meeting. Checked with him earlier. So if we would strike that, I would move for approval.
All right. I'm getting the nod from Ms. Walker. Okay.
Second.
I have a motion from Mr. Atkinson, second by Commissioner C, to approve the minutes of the Transportation Policy Committee as amended. Any further discussion or any other amendments? Hearing none, call for the question. All in favor? Aye. Any opposed?
Aye.
Motion carries. Item 6 on our agenda is to discuss and take appropriate action regarding Resolution 2022-04, adopting the fiscal year 22 Texas Department of Transportation Safety Performance Management targets pursuant to 23 CFR 790.207A1A5 to advance the Texas Department of Transportation Division of Transportation Planning and Programming. Mr. Jones.
Thank you, Your Honor. I'm sure Mr. Keenum was here in spirit that meeting. The last 3 surface transportation bills have all enacted performance measure processes to achieve targets and report results. MPOs have been given the opportunity to adopt their own local performance measures or follow the state DOT's effort to achieve selected performance measures in several reporting venues, traffic safety being one of them. MPOs, the Lubbock MPO, and Txdot are required by law to report annually on the process that is being made to, or progress that is being made to achieve the PM1 safety targets set by the Commission. The 5 reportable safety targets include the number of fatalities, the rate of fatalities per 100 million miles traveled, the number of serious injuries, the rate of serious injuries per 100 million miles traveled, and the number of non-motorized fatalities and non-motorized serious injuries. These performance measures are listed on the resolution in your agenda backup on page 18. And if adopted, it will approve the 2020 targets that have already been approved by the Commission. These targets are 5-year averages that fit a straight line trend line going back to 2018. Txdot reports in their 2020 Highway Safety Improvement Program annual report that Txdot has made significant progress in achieving these targets. Txdot's 2020 Highway Safety Improvement Program report reports that over 690 safety projects have been programmed, totaling over $290 million, focusing on barriers, curve improvements, intersection improvements, pedestrian improvements, rumble strips, widening projects, and other off-system enhancements to achieve the safety initiative that surrounds the 7 approved emphasis areas, which include distracted driving, impaired driving, intersection safety, older road users, pedestrian safety, roadway and lane departures, and speeding. In that regard, the chart on page 26 in your backup is from the 2020 Highway Safety Plan. It shows that Lubbock resides in the 22nd place on the list of the 25 most wanted jurisdictions by total fatal crashes statewide. The pages 27 through 29 portray roadway fatalities in a different perspective. Through 2019, fatal crashes were most likely to occur on Saturdays, with 17.4% of all fatal crashes, and Sundays, with 15.8% of all fatal crashes. The hours of 9 to 11:59 p.m. were the deadliest, with 17% of all fatal crashes occurring during that time frame. However, the combined time frame between 6 p.m. until 3 a.m. accounted for 45.8% of all fatal crashes, obviously indicating the need for increased nighttime enforcement. The map on page 29 shows that except for El Paso and Lubbock, most of the majority of crash fatalities occur along the I-35 corridor. The graphs on pages 30 through 33 are just another way, a more common way, if you will, to express the targets, and are a little easier to read and understand the 5-year averages. In summary, Txdot writes on page 66 of their 2020 Highway Safety Improvement Program annual report that based on the data available, it appears that Txdot has achieved the targets in each of the noted performance measures. Again, on page 68, they stipulate that Txdot's efforts over the last decade have made a significant difference in saving lives of Texans and visitors to our state. If you look at the targets in the resolution, you'll note that each is expressed as a 5-year average going back to 2018. As long as the actual data meets or is less than the 5-year average for the next year, FHWA recognizes that the stakeholder, in this case Txdot, has achieved significant progress toward the targets, and therefore the MPO can report the same success. That being said, I would like to echo that the LMPO shares the same concerns as Chief Mitchell reported to the Lubbock City Council last week. Those being the local increase in the traffic crashes, the reckless drivers, and the hit and runs, especially the speeding and the drunk driving, as contributory factors to the increase in vehicular homicides, 120% over last year. For the year 2021, there were 8,408 traffic crashes, 2,636 involving injuries. 44 crashes also involved 47 fatalities, 12 being pedestrians. Also in 2021, there were 517 DWI arrests, up 45.5% from last year. Lastly, I would ask you to support the resolution respecting that we will plan and program projects that contribute to the accomplishments of the noted targets. And that is my presentation, unless you have any questions, Mr. Chairman.
Thank you. Any questions of Mr. Jones? Any comments from the committee?
Mr. Chairman.
Yes, sir. Mr. Warren.
No question, Dr. Jones. I just had a comment to make. You mentioned the fatalities in Lubbock kind of stood out this year, and I'm concurring with that. And it's sad that I don't know what happened in our district this past year, but in calendar year 2020, we had 75 fatalities in the Lubbock district. Calendar year 2021, we had 129 fatalities. So it went up well over 50%.
Mr. Warren, would you also attribute that to other districts? Did other districts besides Lubbock see that increase, that type of an increase as well?
Statewide, we saw an increase that we haven't seen in 40 years.
Yes, sir.
We had more fatalities than we've had in the past 40 years statewide. So, but there was only 2 districts, I think, in the state that saw this major increase like Lubbock did. We have a quarterly fatal review meeting at our office, and I've said for years we're doing our best to idiot-proof our roads the best we can, but a vast majority of these fatalities involve distracted, drunk driving, and failure to be restrained. And you can't engineer that out. So I'm serving right now on a statewide committee with the MPOs, called the Txdot MPO Safety Task Force. Has 2 transportation commissioners on it, Commissioner Ryan and Commissioner New. And I'm suggesting that our focus from that group needs to be more on the enforcement side and the education side. We're failing miserably to educate people on the value of seatbelt use. Although Texas, I think, enjoys roughly a 95% compliance rate with seatbelt use, non-use of seatbelts accounts for over 50% of the fatalities in the state. So that 5% that's not wearing a seatbelt, they account for over half the fatalities in the state. So there's only so much engineering we can do. And so I'm encouraging that committee to focus more on the education and enforcement side. So that's all comment I had. I appreciate it.
Thank you, Mr. Warren.
Mr. Chairman,
Yes, sir.
I just, Mr. Warren's comments are well made. We made a number of comments last week when Chief Mitchell made his report, and I won't belabor the point, but I am I think it's worth mentioning. It's something that I think causes our council much pause, is that more than 1 in 4 of our traffic fatalities in Lubbock last year were pedestrians being killed. 12 of 47, if I recall the numbers correctly. And that's something that's, we're as a council looking at, working on. To your point about enforcement, we agree completely about that. I hope that some of the things we're talking about around on Avenue Q will have an impact on that. I don't know what the numbers are, but there are several of those fatalities are on Avenue Q, and unfortunately, that's not the first year we've dealt with that, as Steve, as you know, and regardless of our efforts to try to make it safer, lighting, crosswalks, et cetera, we still deal with those problems, and so there's work in front of us.
But, Mr. Mayor, I will say that I think the efforts that the city is making and partnering with the MPO, what we did in our last meeting was to infuse some money into Avenue Q. We all know that is one of our most troublesome spots when it comes to pedestrians. And so I'm very proud of the fact that the city is doing such a remarkable job in addressing that, and that this commission also partners with that. So I want to do that kind of shout out as well, that we're able to jointly address that particular, at least the Avenue Q problem. I know we can't do anything about anybody running across the loop. That seems to be another thing, and that happens in all 26 miles of the loop. But I will just want to say thank you, Mr. Jones, for bringing this to us and for constantly reminding us of, we talk about, moving people around, and we talk about schools and how these roads affect schools, and it just reminds us of probably our number one job here is safety, to make sure that our constituents, the people that we serve, are safe when they go out. And I, like you, Mr. Warren, I'm concerned about we can't make it idiot-proof, because we still have idiots out there. Idiots who drink, idiots who text, idiots who don't wear their seatbelt. And so I think education needs to be our top priority, and enforcement. Those have to go hand in hand. Thank you.
I might also point out the last pedestrian fatality on Interstate 27, the body was found directly beneath the pedestrian overpass at 54th Street.
Any other comments from the committee? If not, the motion to be entertained is to approve Resolution 2022-04, advance it to Txdot. Do I have a motion?
So move.
Motion by Mayor Pope. Do I have a second? Second by Mayor Addington. A motion is second. Call for the question. Oh, it was Steve? I'm sorry. How do you do this? Do you just have everybody so close that you can tell where it's coming from? Motion by Mayor Pope, a second by Mr. Warren. Call for the question. All in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? Motion carries. Thank you, Mr. Jones.
Thank you.
Mr. Chair, I'm going to have another meeting I have already.
Okay.
So I didn't expect it to run
All
this
right.
long, so I'll excuse myself.
All right, you're excused.
Thank you, ladies and gentlemen.
Thank you, Commissioner. Item 7 is to discuss and take appropriate action regarding Resolution 2022-05 to ratify actions previously taken by the Lubbock Public Transit Advisory Board concerning Public Transportation Agency Safety Plan, their targets, and Transit Asset Management Plan targets to advance the Federal Transit Administration Office of Planning and Program Development in Region 6. Mr. Jones.
As I noted in my agenda backup, City Bus is required to establish targets for a transit asset management plan and a public transportation agency safety plan, since they receive federal funds under FTA's Urbanized Area Formula Grant Program. The operating safety programs are basically safety risk management and safety risk mitigation plans. City Bus is required to coordinate and cooperate with the MPO in developing their targets for these plans, and the MPO is required to include the targets and processing in its planning efforts for the MTP, our long-range plan, and our TIP programming. And so what we're doing here is asking you to adopt the most recent update as a condition of coordination and cooperation so that we can begin to upload that data into our new 23-26 TIP that we have already begun. And that being said, I've asked Chris to give you an update on a little more information on what the targets really mean and how they achieve those targets. So, Chris, you want to?
Sure.
Thanks, sir. So, starting with the P task, this is very similar to the same discussion we just got finished with the highway side of things. FTA back in 2018 pushed out a regulation that we needed to take the same approach to our safety on our system with passengers and vehicles and the general public. And so therefore, there's a data-driven approach to our safety culture and the things that we do internally to provide safety for the general public. So the safety metrics that are in here are very, very similar to what you do on the highway side that we just got finished discussing. On page 39, which is, has there two graphs there that provide our targets that we took to our board back in September, and these are the targets for FY22. And there's two different charts there. One is our fixed route system, and the second one there is our demand response system, which takes our paratransit service and our general public on demand service into that one. And so we have a baseline. So our baseline is a 5-year rolling average. So these numbers, the sheet directly behind that kind of gives the 5-year outlook that creates these metrics or these numbers. And so the rolling 5 years is through 2020. When we develop these, there's always a 1-year lag to getting these metrics. So these are the baseline is what we actually on average over the last 5 years saw on the system, which I should point out that to get a consistent reporting mechanism from all agencies across that have to report up through FTA, all these numbers are based upon 1 million revenue miles annually. So some systems don't meet that. Some systems are way past that, but that's kind of the baseline that they wanted to get to where they can compare all systems equally. And so all these numbers are based upon the 1 million revenue miles per year. So for the rate of fatalities, we, of course, are zero. Rate of injuries, our target for 2022 is 5.1, and then safety events is 5.1 as well. Those targets are based upon what we have to report to the National Transit Database, which there's a specific metrics of like the things that we have to report on have to meet those certain criteria. And same thing for our demand response, except for the targets are 3.1 for injuries, 0 for fatalities, and 2.5 for safety events. One of the other things that we have to report on through this is for our reliability in our system is mean distance between major mechanical failures, which that has to do with the vehicle that we're actually having to take out of service because it's something that can't be fixed on the road. We're having to have it towed back into the shop to be fixed. So our 5-year average, our target is 40,000 miles for our fixed route buses per million revenue miles. And then for our demand responses, our vans is 43,000 per million revenue miles. And then just, I guess, on page 41 to jump into the TM targets. So this is the Transit Asset Management Plan. So since we operate vehicles and have buildings that are partially funded or funded through FTA, we have to report on metrics to maintain or what it's going to take to get those assets into a state of good repair. As you're all probably aware, FTA came out and said a couple of years ago that there's, several billions of dollars worth of backlog in their state of good repair. And so this is a system they put in place for us to take, again, a data-driven approach and to help us with our planning process in replacing or maintaining a state of good repair amongst our fleet and our facilities. And so there's 3 kind of sections on this chart or this exhibit. There's 2019 targets, 2020, and then 21 targets. Again, these are all kind of a year behind. And this is really a planning tool that we use. So we have to look at kind of what funding we know we're going to be getting on an annual basis, and then how do we use that funding in replacing or maintaining a steady good repair in our fleet. And so these targets are built upon that, and it's really just a planning document. There's nothing that says that if we don't meet these targets, then we're going to lose funding or anything of that sort. It's just more so from a planning standpoint, how we are going to program those funds through our TIP and STIP, through the MPO, and then up through Txdot into FTA. And so I guess I'll just jump to the very bottom graph there, and it talks about there's two types of vehicles that we need to report on, which is our over-the-road bus, which that's kind of the FTA, when they put this plan out, they have a listing of vehicles, and you have to go to you'll find that specific vehicle, and then they tell you how the useful life benchmark of that vehicle. And so they categorize all buses as over-the-road buses. And so that useful life benchmark is 14 years on those. And so in 2020, we had a useful life benchmark, our goal was to achieve 64% of that fleet being less than 14 years old. And because we were looking at the funding mechanisms and not having the dedicated funding source to replace all those, we wanted to maintain that 64% in the 2021 target. And then for the cutaway buses, which are all of our vans, we have 28 of those. Those are 10-year useful life vehicles, which I think is a little bit high, but that's they're 10 years. We had, out of 2020, we had 50% of our fleet that was less than 10 years old. We had programmed to have some vehicle replacement in 2021 that would significantly help us, decrease that number or increase the amount of vehicles that we had a useful life, except for the COVID situation happened with all as we know, the manufacturing of vehicles right now is a big challenge. And so those vehicles were not delivered in 2021, and there's some skepticism of 2022 on those. So we weren't able to beat that, and so what we've gone back is we try to revert that and raise that number up a bit as we move forward. But really, it's just a planning document to help us plan as we see funding coming in to make recommendations on the use of those funds for capital replacement. And the last one we have on there is going to be our facility, which in a facility, there's a whole host of things that you have to bring somebody in to evaluate in your facility: the facade, electrical, HVAC systems, everything, carpet, walls. And so we partnered with the City of Lubbock Facilities Department. They came through and did that for us. And basically, if it's livable and functionable and it's not dilapidated and totally falling apart, that kind of meets you at a level 3, which is where our facility is currently. So in the next edition of this that you will see likely next year, we will be adding a third category underneath rolling stock, which is vans, because the newer vans that we've got in, they're not a cutaway vehicle. So they have their own category for vans, so it's a little bit smaller of a vehicle and has a different, so we'll have another reporting category report on that. So that's just a look to the future. So with that, I'd be happy to answer any questions that you guys may have.
Any questions of Mr. Mandrell? Sorry, I have just one on the, looking at your 5-year average of injuries, of course, 0 on fatalities, which just amazes me. But the 5-year average on your injuries is just a hair over 5 a year.
Correct.
The nature of those injuries, are they inside the bus or outside of the bus?
Both. So it could be considered anything that happens on the vehicle, boarding or alighting, or just around the perimeter.
So somebody stepping onto the bus, slipping and falling and cracking their kneecap
That's correct.
would be considered an injury
Correct. And
for these statistics.
That's correct. Anytime, so the NTD reporting metric says that anytime a person is transported away from the scene for medical attention, that is reported as an injury occurring. And so these could be anything that the passenger requested medical attention and was then therefore transported, or we requested medical attention and then therefore was transported. So it could be, it's a whole host of things. We've had some.
Could it be even a medical emergency, not necessarily something related to the actual bus itself or what's going on the street, but somebody on the bus has a heart attack and you need to call and haul them off? Would that come under this category as well?
Not under this category. There's a separate category that we have to report on for that through the NTD, but that is not included in the injuries piece. So this is truly somebody has gotten hurt to some degree and has requested medical attention, and they've been transported away from the scene for care.
Still 5 a year based on, it's remarkable. It is remarkable. Any other questions, comments from the committee? If not, the action item necessary is to approve Resolution 2022-05. Entertain a motion.
Second.
I have a motion by Councilman Massengale and a second by Councilwoman Sheila Patterson-Harris to approve Resolution 2022-05. Any further discussion? Hearing none, call for the question. All in favor? Aye. Any opposed? Motion carries. Thank you, Mr. Mandrell. Thank you, Mr. Jones. Yes, sir. All right. Thank you, Mayor.
See you, Mayor.
Item 8 on our agenda is our reports. Mr. Jones.
Thank you, Judge. The first report is on page 46. It was forwarded to us by Txdot 2 weeks ago, and all MPOs in the state. It is a listing of all existing and new competitive grant programs that are available in the Infrastructure Investment and Jobs Act, or bill, as it is more frequently called now. Recall that FHWA as well as AMPO, our national organization, have both announced that they are setting up shop to help state DOTs and MPOs and other eligible stakeholders prepare grant applications that will be consistent with the new law. That being said, Txdot followed that guidance with additional information from the federal bill czar, Mr. Mitch Landrieu, who was previously the mayor of New Orleans, who made a point to tell all mayors across the nation and city leaders in that letter, or in a letter, that you don't have to wait until all the guidance is published and all the shiny is rubbed off of the bill. Go ahead now, select your grants, begin your grant applications, make sure your projects are in your MPO's long-range plan and your TIP, and begin to engage in dialogue with your congressional representatives. Parentheses, You'll need these allies since the grants are competitive, close parentheses. He also noted that in addition to the help offered by FHWA and AMPO, his office will soon be releasing guidance for accessing a technical assistance pipeline to help especially the smaller cities, smaller MPOs, and smaller county organizations that don't have staff and expertise. The second report on page 53 is just a table and contents and an executive summary out of a 500-page guidebook that was included in your agenda email. That is supposed to enable you to achieve significant coordination between the federal government, states, tribal governments, community stakeholders, local governments, and other key partners in accessing the new bill.
And you've read every single page of
Every
this.
single page. RPOs would be in that group as well, because RPOs have been deemed eligible as a grant recipient. RPOs and MPOs. It is a roadmap to the funding available under the law. As more guidance is published, this guidebook is going to be amended, and I suspect it will never be complete.
Mr. Chairman.
Mr. Warren.
Mr. Jones, it's my understanding in this guidebook, FHWA is encouraging state DOTs to give the lowest priority to projects that expand capacity.
Yes.
And promising significant environmental review of said projects. And so there's some in Congress not real happy about that. They're wanting to let the DOTs do what DOTs do and address the issues. But it's my understanding also that's holding up the funding for the bill. It's passed, but it's not been funded yet. So at this time, Txdot has not seen any additional funding coming in for this. The good news for us, Loop 88 project has already been completed on its environmental review, so we don't have to worry about those expanded environmental reviews on Loop 88. The Lubbock District's focus will remain on pushing forward projects on Loop 88 with that additional funding.
Thank you.
The third report on page 59 it was also sent to you as a separate attachment in your email agenda. It's a smaller report, only 47 or 42 pages, I think. The National Roadway Safety Strategy. It addresses the nearly 38,700 crash fatalities we experienced over 2020 across the nation, which is a 7% increase over the year before. It will complement efforts like the Vision Zero program that USDOT and FHWA have invested in heavily, not to say the least about Txdot and many other states and many other MPOs across the nation. It calls for improvements throughout the transportation industry, including redundant systems that reduce the risk that one mistake will lead to crashes that kill or injure road users. Other initiatives include national regulation, now hear me clearly, national regulation of traffic control devices across the nation, certain aspects of street design, lower national speeds, expanding the nationalized Complete Streets initiative, more and better records on drivers with drug and alcohol violations to be able to get them off the streets faster, and so forth. Many safety advocates and pundits say in the final analysis that it is the bold paradigm shift that the nation needs. And I leave it for your reading pleasure. The next report is the status on our initiative to find an assistant director. We have completed a second interview with Mr. Martin Lucero. He's from Peoria, Arizona, works in Surprise, Arizona, with Phoenix and Scottsdale in between. So he's pretty spread out. Educated at BYU with a Bachelor in International Studies and Global Economics and a master's degree in Public Administration. He currently works for the City of Surprise as their Transportation Planning Manager and has been there for 10 years. Previously worked at the COG for 3 years as the Senior Transportation Manager, and previously worked for the City of Farmington, New Mexico for 4 years in the MPO there. 2 years previous to that, he worked for the City of Farmington Planning Department as a long-range planner. He has a well-rounded hands-on history of producing MPO planning documents, using MPO planning tools with appropriate relationships with federal, state, and local stakeholders. This second interview firmly established that Mr. Lucero is the one prime final candidate. And I didn't make an offer to him yet. I wanted an opportunity to give you an opportunity to meet him and visit with him, so that's what we're working on. If you have any comments about that, well, please let me know.
Well, obviously, this is not really an action item for the board, but
No.
Just trying to look for a consensus from the board. I for one, this is a position as an assistant director. So my particular point of view is, Mr. Jones, you are the one who's hiring this person. You are the one that can make that best decision on who will be working directly under you in this assistant position. Sure would like to meet him and get to know him, but my consensus is we'll just let Mr. Jones handle the hire. Mr. Warren.
I concur with that, and I know Mr. Jones utilized a committee on this search as well, and I have full faith in that group's ability to select the right person.
Yeah, notwithstanding those comments, I would look forward to the opportunity to meet Mr. Lucero when he comes to town.
Indeed.
The last report is our monthly financial report. It's through December, or the 25th percentile. You'll note that we are still just 19% collected on our revenue, but our expenses are only at 15.4%. So unless you have any questions, Your Honor, that's my report.
Are there any questions about the financial report or any other matters before the MPO?
Motion to adjourn.
Motion to adjourn. Motion accepted. We are adjourned.
Thank you. We appreciate your time.